Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Holly and I make sewing and fashion videos, and today's video I am going to be doing a tutorial on how to make a tote bag. A tote bag is a really simple, great first project for anyone who's trying to learn to sew, and I thought I'd just do a quick tutorial because I'm going to make one myself for my holiday. On a tote bag we have some skills to learn, such as learning right sides to wrong sides. We have stitching seams, we have some top stitching, some rolling for the hems. A great project we can make from a old bed sheet, a pillowcase, or any other fabric that you have lying around. And also it's best to make it out of a cotton based fabric, which is really easy to sew with and a great fabric to learn on. So let's get into sewing my tote bag. Right, so I've just finished pressing my fabric. Now for your tote bag, also got my coffee. For a tote bag you can literally make it as small or as large as you would like. It just depends what you're going to be using it for, what you're going to be putting in it, that sort of thing. I want it big enough to go shopping with, maybe like to fit a magazine in, that sort of size. You can also make your tote bag rectangle or square, it depends on your preference as well. First step, I'm going to draw out on my fabric the size of the tote bag that I want to make. I need to decide how big I want it, and then I'm going to literally draw it on in pencil or in chalk. You can also do it in chalk, or you can make a pattern, but you can also just draw onto the fabric and it will be fine. So we're going to do that first. Lay it out onto your table completely flat and then mark the size that you want on your tote bag. Now when we mark our size, we need to think also about our seam allowance and the top section of like the tote bag where the handle is going to attach. Now for my bag I'm going to be using a French seam. So French seam is 2 lines of stitching that basically encloses the edge of the fabric, and it makes it, you can't see a raw edge basically. It's a beautiful finish and it can be done easily on cotton and more lighter fabrics, but you wouldn't do it on heavier fabrics. So as I'm using a light linen, I'm going to be doing a French seam. So for a French seam, you can do them on a 1 centimetre seam allowance, but they are easier and more successful and a little bit bigger if you're using a thicker fabric. So I'm going to go for a 2 centimetre seam allowance. I'm going to think about what size I want for the tote bag, and then we're going to add on, we need 2 centimetre seam allowance on each side. So then we're going to add that on to our overall number. Also we need it around each edge of the tote bag and also along the bottom. Now for the top of the tote bag where our handles are going to be attached, we are going to do a kind of a rolled hem and attach the handles into it. So again we need a good seam allowance. For this I'd kind of recommend about a 4 centimetre seam allowance. We've got a 1 centimetre turnover to stop it fraying, and then we're going to roll over 3 centimetres and attach our handle into it. So those are our measurements. So we need to add that onto whatever size bag you want to make. So I'm going to first draw a straight line down a straight grain down here, just using a selvage edge as our guide. I'm using pencil here, but I'd recommend using chalk. It kind of depends what fabric you're using. So I'm just using my pattern master here, or you can use any ruler, just so you can get a straight line. And now it's going to work out how long I'm going to have it. Okay. So I think I'm going to go for a 40 centimetre bag, then plus our seam allowance length of 40. So I'm just going to mark that here where 40 is. Now I'm going to square that off using my ruler and draw the bottom of the tote bag. See how long we want this. It's kind of need to work out, we need to start drawing it out, see what we'd like the look of, if we want more of a square bag more of a rectangle bag. I quite like, we'll go for 40 again. I quite like the look of a square bag today. So we draw our bottom line, and then we're going to square this off again to get a nice straight line running up the other side, which is the other side of our bag. Here we go. So I've got my lines drawn here. I'm now going to add my seam allowance on top of these lines. So like I said, we want a French seam on down the edges. So I'm going to do a 2 centimetre seam allowance down there. And then I do 2 centimetre seam allowance on the bottom as well. Because you want that French seam all around. Now when we get to the top, let's just mark where 40 is on this side. Perfect. We're going to add our 4 centimetres seam allowance for the rolled hem to attach our handles. I just got enough fabric. Perfect. Have our line here for our main tote bag area, and then we got the 2 centimetre seam allowance running around each edge and the bottom. And then when we get to the top, if you can finally see those lines, we have our 4 centimetre seam allowance for our handles to be attached. So I'm now going to cut this out, and we can use this as our template for our other side of the tote bag. So here we have our square piece of fabric cut out for one side of our tote bag. Now for a tote bag, we need 2 pieces of this basically. So now we've cut this out as a square, we can now use this as our pattern. So we're going to lay this out on top of the fabric and then cut round it. So here we go, we've got 2 pieces exactly the same size ready to make up our tote bag. So I think we're going to stitch our tote bag together and then we'll move on to the handles. I just realised I'm doing this tutorial in my living room, which is a mess, not in my sewing room, but is being used upstairs. So I'm so sorry for the background. If you watch my other videos, then you would know what my other sewing room actually looks like, but I'm downstairs today. Okay, so our first step of attaching the bag together is, because we're going to be doing French seams, a French seam, I have a tutorial on my blog more in depth of how to do a French seam, so I'll leave that linked below if you want to see a step-by-step with images and writing. But essentially a French seam is to enclose the raw edge. So what we do first, we pin our pieces of fabric wrong sides together, we stitch down half the length of our seam allowance. So we have cut a 2 centimetre seam allowance here on our bag, so therefore we're going to stitch with a 1 centimetre seam allowance with wrong sides together. Now once that's done, we then are going to slightly trim the seam allowance back. We're going to turn the bag round the other way round the seam, so it's going to be now right sides together. We're then going to press that seam really close to the stitch line. Then we're going to pin it back into place, and then we're going to run down that seam again with a 1 centimetre seam allowance stitch allowance. Now that second stitch will then enclose that raw edge, and then we'll have a lovely edging basically. So that's what I'm going to do today. Now on the tote bag, I would recommend doing the 2 edges first. We're going to do down these 2 edges first, finish those French seams, and then go on and do the bottom French seam. That's the way to do it, to get the best corners, because you wouldn't be able to really do all 3 French seams at the same time, because you need to be able to turn your bag, in this case, the right and wrong way easily and get to the other side to be able to press and stitch down. So that's what I'm going to be doing now. I'm going to pin my bag together, stitch with the 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then I will go from there and show you the rest of the steps. So I'm setting up my machine. I need to do my bobbin, so I'm just going to load my bobbin. Always need a white bobbin, don't we? So I filled that up nice because I had black in my machine, and that's not going to work with our white linen if I want an all white bag, is it? So let's just thread this up. So I've pinned all my side seams together, just the 2 side seams, not the bottom of the bag yet. Getting ready. Good. Now we can start with our sewing. So we're going to stitch down our side seams with our 1 centimetre seam allowance with wrong sides together. Here we are. This is what we're looking like. We've got our seam there. And now we're just going to cut some of this excess off. We're going to cut down to maybe 1/2 centimetre. We don't want to go too close to the stitch line, but we want to cut some of it off. So when we turn it around, we don't catch this in the other seam. So let's just do that. That's about the amount that I've taken off the seam. As you can see, only a small amount. And this is now what our stitch and seam line looks like. You can see it's got about 1/2 centimetre raw edge now. I'm just going to do that for the other side as well. Our task is now to create the French seam. So we're going to turn this the wrong way round. So it's like this, and now we're going to press down this seam here where we've just stitched as close as we can. There we go. So you get a nice sharp edge with the stitch lines going to be like this. So I'm just going to go and press it, and I'll show you what it looks like after. So I've turned it around and I've just pressed it, and that's what it should look like. Very nice and pressed if you're using cotton. Now, if you need to, you can pin this into place. We're going to stitch along this edge again on the wrong side to enclose this raw edge that we've just done. So we're going to stitch another 1 centimetre seam allowance along this edge to enclose it and finish our French seam. There we have it. So then when we that was really odd. Then when we turn our bag back round to the right sides, you will then have a lovely enclosed seam inside here, which looks really professional, really hard wearing, and just really beautiful, and you're not going to worry about it fraying when being used. So yes, that's the start of that. So now we're going to do exactly the same thing for the bottom of our bag as well. Start with the wrong sides together, stitch on your right sides, and then flip it around, press, cut, sew. So let's do that now. You've done the bottom, your bag should look like this. I just need to press out my corners, but it's starting to look like a tote bag. Really exciting. So the next thing is now we're going to do the top. This is how we do it. First of all, we need to turn over 1 centimetre here to just enclose this raw edge. And then we're going to turn it over again, so it looks like this, by 3 centimetres. So that's when we used our 4 centimetre seam allowance. So the best thing is to press this into place, and then we're going to go move on to the handles, because we can't stitch this in without creating our handles first. because we attach it all together. So we go and press that like that. So we've prepped our bag. And now onto handles. For the length of the handle, it depends up to you, how long you want it, how long you want it to wear it, how you're going to wear it, you're going to hold it, you're going to put it over your shoulder, that sort of thing. And then you can work out whatever width of the strap that you would like. I normally go for a 4 centimeter wide finished strap. So how are we going to do that? So the measurements for the strap are, so if you need to remember what you want your finished strap to look like. You then double it, so it's then going to be 8, and then plus 2 centimeters seam allowance. So I need to cut a length that is 10 centimeters wide, because we're going to halve it and then tuck the seam allowances in and then stitch down and top stitch. I think I'm going to be how long we want my straps. So if I'm going to wear the bag, I'm just do a rough measurement for about here over my shoulder, and that takes me to 84 centimeters long. So I'm going to roughly cut my straps to 84, and then plus we need seam allowance, because we're going to be putting our straps into the casing that we're making at the top of the bag. We need around 4 centimeters seam allowance. So you want to add on 8 centimeters to whatever length that you would like. So that's what I'm going to do now, and cut it out of my linen. I managed to get my strips. I cut my strips in half because I had a little scrap bit of fabric left over, and I thought I could easily make the strips out of that and just stitch it together. So if you've got any scraps, great idea for your straps, because it is quite a lengthy bit of fabric that you're going to use up. So for the straps, first of all, you need to press on each side 1 centimeter seam allowance in, like this. So it will sit like that. That will enclose the raw edge. So you want to do that on both sides here of your long length. And then once you've done that, you will then press it so it folds in half like this. Then we're going to pin down this edge that has been pressed, and then we're going to top stitch them all together. So then it encloses all the edges and also makes it quite a tough strap, so to take some weight. So that's what I'm going to do now, press and sew our straps together. I've just pressed the straps, and I'll just explain what I've done so it's a bit clearer. So you've got the 1 centimeter seam allowance pressed in like that, and then you fold it in half like that, so it halves the length of the fabric, the width of the fabric, sorry. And then we want to pin down here, and then when we top stitch, we want to stitch as close as we can to these two outside edges to give it this, make sure this is all nice and closed, and then give it sort of structure. And because we top stitch one side, it's quite nice to top stitch the other side. So that's what I am going to do now. The straps finished and look lovely. Now it's time to attach them to our bag. So let's grab our bag back. Where you want to place them, completely up to you. But obviously you want one strap on one side and one strap on the other side of the bag. And yeah, so I think I'm going to place them maybe around there. You want to be kind of not too much in the center, too much by the edge, like that. And how we do it is, so we want to fold in, I'm just going to cut some of the raw edge off because it's starting to fray a little bit. We don't want that in the way, do we? So where we have our fold down section here, we want to place our bag strap in it, fold it over within it, and we're first going to stitch it like that. So we basically just tuck it in, we fold down the top edge here and tuck the strap into it and then pin into place. So we're just going to do that. What it's going to look like, it's going to look like this. So you see we folded the top edge over and tucked your handles in and pinned into place. And do that for the other side now. That's what it's going to look like. We're pinned in, then we're going to pin the rest of the, let me turn this around. We're going to pin down the rest of the turnover of the top, ready to stop stitch. So turn your bag inside out, makes it life a little bit easier now, and just pin that into place. We're now going to top stitch on the wrong side with the wrong side up all along this edge here, running over straps to secure them in and to secure this top bit down. So that's what we're going to do now, and we're going to stitch as close as we can to this folded edge there to keep that raw seam nice and enclosed. I'd say a couple of mils off the edge just to be sure. So we've done that stitching, and now we have our straps attached to the bag. So now we need to reinforce these straps and to bring them up, so they're a bit up. We're then going to fold the strap up like that, so it's now sticking out the top of the bag. And on the right side of the bag, we're going to pin that in place. Do that on the other strap. So we're just going to put it up, fold it completely flat to the inside of the bag, and on the right sides pin it in place. So it now looks like that, and that is in the inside of the bag. Do that for the other one. Just pull that up and pin. Because before our straps were sticking downwards, and now they're going to be sticking upwards where we want them. So we're going to turn the bag the right way around, and there we go. We've got it now looking a bit more like a bag. Now the last step, to secure these handles in nice and secure again, we're going to do exactly the same thing, but we're going to top stitch around the very top of the bag, and then once we go over here, we're then going to secure in the straps. So that means the straps have been stitched in twice, so that's going to be nice and secure when you're using your bag. So it's going to run a stitch all the way around here and secure the handles in, and then that's our last step. Just do a view of how it's looking. So then we're going to stitch along here, and we're going to secure in the straps. I'm going to stitch as close as we can to the edge, like that, like so. And then we have some beautiful top stitching. So there we go. I've got my straps all stitched in and secured, so that's been nicely secured. I need to press it, but there we go. That's our lovely, stand up so we can demonstrate it. My lovely tote bag to go shopping with. What a lovely shopper. I think that's a really easy, lovely way to make a tote bag. As I say, the tote bag is such a brilliant project to make as one of your first projects, because as you saw, we've got quite a few skills to learn. You learn the basics of right side, wrong side, pressing in seams, how to secure seams, those sort of things. So thank you so much for watching today's video. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope it's helped you learn how to make a tote bag with me. And if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel, as I have so many sewing videos that I'm sure you're gonna love. Thanks again, see you soon, bye.